So this is an obscure article from a book that has a 50-cent price tag on it called American Education in Foreign Perspectives, 20th Century Essays. And the article that I want to read is called A Refugee Teacher Looks on Democratic and Fascist Education. It was written by Rudolf Ekstein, and it was first printed in the Education volume. They just called it Education Volume 60 in October 1939, which would have been 2 years before Pearl Harbor, 2 years before the United States entered World War II, and during the rise of fascism. So here we go. A Refugee Teacher. It's only 10 pages too, but it's definitely applies to what's going on right now, and probably has been here actually for quite some time. So a refugee teacher looks on democratic and fascist education. 10 pages. Here we go. 71. Page 71. As hard as we tried to avoid fascism and to restore democracy in my small country far away in Central Europe, it was in vain. It was in vain to avoid fascism and to restore democracy. So it might seem to be useless that I, one of the refugees after the complete surrender of freedom in Austria, write about democratic and fascist education in America, the stronghold of individual liberty, and as I believe, the hope of the whole progressive world. I hear a lot of folks talking about how we're strong in individuality, whereas other countries are more collectivist and they care more about the group. Rudolf Ekstein, he's a refugee teacher from Austria. So he got to see the educational systems in Austria, and Austria got pretty much easily conquered by Nazi Germany early on, because Hitler had said that Austria used to be part of the German nation. And so, therefore, he marched into Austria, said, hey, I'm going to take this place over, and then he did. And a lot of countries would do that. I want to say Denmark did that, and Czechoslovakia, Poland, and they call it the capitulation. Before the capitulation, so Austria capitulated to Nazi Germany. So he's comparing the fascist education he got to see in Austria compared to the United States. Because he believes in democracy. He believes in a democratic education. He truly believes in it. The will of the people, for everybody to be individuals and to be free. All right. So we, coming from Europe, the happy group of an innumerable army of refugees and prisoners, must confess that we did a bad job in defending the culture of our fatherland, defending the freedom of creed, political opinion, free press and free speech, freedom of religious and national minorities. So look at these freedoms. Again, the culture in our fatherland. They said they defended the freedom of creed, political opinion, free press, free speech, and the freedom of religious and national minorities. I must admit that all our attempts to solve political, economical, or educational problems failed. All of our attempts. And yet, coming from Europe, we have perhaps a great advantage which will help us to contribute to the progress of democracy. We faced fascism. We suffered from fascism, and we still suffer from fascism, as it is impossible for human beings whose hearts are not made of stone to forget their relatives and friends, to forget their people facing fear, terror, and death day after day. So while he was from Austria, and he got to see the fascism right up front, right in front of his face, he got the fuck out. He got a choice to be a refugee, to run away, and he's a refugee. What are we doing with refugees now? So, you know, Anne Frank would have been a refugee that we denied. Anne Frank was a refugee that we denied. And children and widows, give me a fucking break. And perhaps the culture that they're coming into might not be quite so healthy as y'all think you are. So, to forget their people facing fear, terror, and death day after day. So, fascism is here, and it's carrying on. We had to pay dearly for this experience, and we shall make good use of it. We know the enemy. We know his slogans of independence for suppressed nations, and we saw his real deeds. We haven't forgotten, and we shall not forget. And so it seems to me appropriate to write about this experience, to try to serve my new country as best as I can. So we know his slogans of independence for suppressed nations. So for suppressed nations, he's saying, let's, rah, 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 independent. So Palestine, right? Go Palestine. I don't know exactly which countries they're talking about, but we know his slogans of independence for suppressed nations, and we saw his real deeds. Hitler talked out of both sides of his mouth. He said that he was in favor of freedom and democracy, that Germany was a peaceful country and did what they were supposed to do, but all the other countries in the world would, conspire against him. I've already mentioned that there were many problems we couldn't solve. I only want to make some remarks on educational problems to which I devoted my work and interest. So this isn't on Nazi Germany. It isn't on why America hasn't gotten into the war. This is just about the educational systems. What is the aim of a democratic education versus the aim of a fascist education? And fascism, like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, like our human natures are good, and like socialism, these are ideas that are wholly absent in the United States. Usually when we were asked about the aim of education, we answered, we want our children to get the right attitude for life, to have the right personality, to become capable for the struggle of life. That's what they want for education, not just to learn things, but to have the right personality, to have the right attitude for life, and to be capable for the struggle of life. So it's about not just giving them information and teaching them to know how to do things, but it's about fashioning them to think in the right manner. Fichte, I want to say he was a German philosopher in 1806, Napoleon. He was a philosopher. After they got conquered, they wanted to enhance their educational system, and he says, well, we want to fashion the children to where they always love their Führer, their fatherland. And that's exactly what turned out, that's exactly what happened. And also, just to mention, Adolf Hitler talked about 3 Reichs. The first Reich would be the Holy Roman Empire. So the Holy Roman Empire was the first Reich. And then the Otto von Bismarck, the unification of Germany, would be your second Reich. So the first Reich was 1,000 years. Your second Reich was 1871 to, I guess, the Weimar Republic, 1871 until 1914. So it was for 40 years. The second Reich was for 40 years. All right. So, get the right attitude for life to have the right personality. This answer would be clear enough if our society wouldn't change, if all institutions would last. In other words, if we had to educate our children always for the same surroundings. So if we give them one type of personality, that is only good if there wasn't, if society wasn't changing, and different goals for different means, right? Different places, different rules. The child is not fit for society. It must be fitted by means of education. To be fit for society means to be willing to recognize the same rules of living as all grown-ups, but the rules, laws of society are changing in different times and in different countries. The different goals, different means. So it is right to say that education deals with the problem of bringing up the children so that they are willing to play our game of life, to recognize our rules and our laws. But we must add also the kind of game we want to play. Different games, different rules, different instruction. If we want to understand educational problems, thereby all questions concerning the educational means, we need to reach a certain goal of education, of democracy and fascism. We have to ask, what is their goal of their education? What is the goal of fascist education? I will try to point it out in a few words. You will understand the fascist attitude after I've translated the refrain of a song they have to sing now in Germany, Austria, and in Czechoslovakia. I saw kindergarten children, school children, boys and girls, Nazi youth, stormtroopers, policemen, soldiers, war veterans, and even war cripples all forced into organizations of the present government. Marching, yes, and even kindergarten children marching, the goose step and singing, We shall go marching even though all is fallen to pieces. Today, Germany belongs to us. Tomorrow, the whole world. That's the refrain of the song that every person in Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, the kindergarten children, school children, boys, girls, Nazi youth, stormtroopers, policemen, soldiers, war veterans, and even war cripples, they're all singing, we shall go on marching even though all is fallen to pieces. Today Germany belongs to us, tomorrow the whole world. And so even though everything is just falling apart around them, they're still going to keep on marching. And what makes them, the hope that they have is today they own themselves in their own country, and then perhaps one day they'll become an empire. Perhaps one day they'll have 900 military bases in 150 countries. One day, perhaps one day they will. The educational goal of fascism is to have youth willing for marching, fighting, killing, even though all has fallen to pieces. The whole population in fascist states have to be ready for war when the leader orders. So it's a war society, a bunch of standing armies just standing around waiting for their dear leader to say, go attack that country. The following whisper joke illustrates the life of Germans and Austrians. Germans within the frontiers are divided into two great parts. One part marches, the other part sits. Not on chairs, but in concentration camps. So that's the joke. There's two kinds of people in this world. There's one who march, the ones who stand, the ones who run, the ones who fight, and then there's the ones who sit in concentration camps. So there's the strong and the weak. The strong stands up, works hard, and kills the weak people in concentration camps. That was a joke in the lives of Germans and the Austrians. The youth has to be prepared physically and mentally to obey blindly the so-called leader. Obedience, that's what they need. This goal of education needs special means. So obedience, fascist education definitely wants you to shut up, sit down, and listen to your dictator, whether it's a teacher or a police officer or political leaders. Whether it's the commander-in-chief, shut your mouth, sit down, do as you're told. In that case, we should better say training, as their means of education has nothing to do with the intellect and the mind. The fascist means of education are not very complicated. You need only one means. If you want to suppress all intellectual impulses, to revive all aggressive, destroying instincts in young people. This means is called power, unlimited power. All schools, all youth organizations, all kindergartens, all educational institutions must be in the hands of the government. I'm going to repeat that, okay? So all schools, all youth organizations, all kindergartens, all educational institutions must be in the hands of the government. No private school, no religious school, no free school organization of the workers. They suppress now the last remainders of free organizations, but they control not only all educational institutions, they try also to destroy the influence of family life. They say, and they are right from their point of view, we need no special intellectual youth. The teacher must use his lessons chiefly for propaganda. I need not mention that they force all teachers to join the fascist teacher organization. So what I mentioned, the reason why I repeated that sentence twice was sort of charter schools. That's sort of how our schools are. Our schools and youth organizations, kindergartens, educational institutions, all of them are in the hands of the government. Every single one of them. And only I don't know if they have they're teaching blind obedience to the local, the individuals in that school. But I'm not for sure if they're all united behind a single leader, the principal. Your principal is your God, and your superintendent is his God. And that's who your children is worshiping, these people. And either they're enhancing, they're helping the parents, or they're taking the influence away from the parents, which is what they want to do. They want to educate and propagandize. They want to get in their heads. They want to brainwash your children. They want to brainwash your children to be little fascist thugs, to go around beating people up and to intimidating people and telling people what to do, because that's what strong people do. So the teacher must use his lessons cheaply for propaganda. So they don't want any special intellectual youth. They just want good, blind, obedient soldiers. I need not mention that they force all teachers to join the fascist teacher organization. So the students have to join all the student organizations, the recreation, that's only by the school, and so do the teachers. The teachers have to join the fascist teacher organization. Every school subject can and has to be used for propaganda. In history, they're taught that Germany won all wars, that Germany is the greatest nation in the whole world, and only through betrayal, through robbery by their inferior enemies did they lose their place in the sun. History is not used to teach historical facts, but some historical facts. Namely, they leave out those which don't fit in their outlook, are used to prove that the leader, in reality, the fascist system, is right, and that children and adolescents should trust him and must obey him. In geography, they don't wish to enrich the knowledge of their children about our earth, but they show them all countries which belong in reality to Germany, as they want to go on marching even though all has fallen to pieces. That is also the reason that you could buy maps in Germany and Austria, now showing great parts of Switzerland, Poland, Lithuania, Hungary, and so on within the German frontiers, and also many colonies. But they don't care about the suppressed German part of Italy, as they are not interested to help the German minorities. So Italy was another place of fascism, Mussolini, but there was a large German population in Italy. So do you care about the German people? But I guess they're the minorities in Italy, so fuck them, who gives a shit? But then in geography, they were saying that the whole world is Germany. Austria used to be Germany. Switzerland used to be Germany. Poland, Lithuania, Hungary. All these countries used to be, parts of Germany. So also Austria and Czechoslovakia, which is also the same argument that Putin is saying with Ukraine, right? That Germany said, well, we used to dominate you many years ago, so we want to dominate you again. Russia's saying the same thing. Let's carry on. In biology, see, in all these lessons, in history, in geography, in biology, and then we're going to talk about chemistry and arithmetic and science. But in biology, they're taught the superiority of German blood, of the Aryan race, a mixture of vague, unproved assumptions, nonsense, and unjustified presumptions. Children are made to believe that it is very easy to go on marching, even though all is falling to pieces. In German, they have to read and to comment on the speeches of the leader. So in Germany, they have to read, or in German, in the language German, to read and comment on the speeches of the leader. So in order to learn German, they're saying, here's our dear leader, here's what our dear leader has said. So read it and tell us what you think, because he's a god. In French or English, they read the translations of his speeches. So to learn other languages, they're learning from the speeches of the Fuhrer, of Adolf Hitler. In chemistry, they are informed how to produce and to use poison gas. That's what they're being taught in chemistry. Here's how you make poison gas, so when you put Jews into concentration camps, you could gas them and murder them. In arithmetic and in algebra, they have to be interested in calculating the trajectories of bullets. In science, children learn all substitutes they can use in wartime and how to prepare a substitute economy in every household. But most of the lessons are devoted to gymnastics. So I'm not sure exactly what that means. I wrote substitutes. So in science, children learn all substitutes they can use in wartime and how to prepare a substitute economy in every household. So I guess substitute economy, this is just tighten up your belt. We're in a war economy, so we need you to be as rich as possible and to be as frugal as possible, perhaps. I'm not for sure. And it says, in war, they learn all substitutes they can in wartime. So instead of science and learning for, inquiry and discovery, their experiments and their inventions all have to do with war, perhaps. I don't know, I want to actually just... He's saying it's substitute, a substitute economy. What is exactly a substitute economy? I don't know. But most of the lessons are devoted to gymnastics, goose step, drill, target practice. Gymnastics. The Germans are the ones that brought gymnasiums over to America anyways. All children of certain ages like to play with guns, and it is not too hard to abuse these human impulses so that they want to go on marching even though all is falling to pieces, and so that they are willing to change their individual personality and private happiness for the fantastic daydream that the whole world will belong to them tomorrow. They must not think because the leader is thinking for them. They shall not dare to be independent individuals, to look for the truth. They are not supposed to have their own opinion or their own faith. Every teacher has to be a little leader, and he has all the power he wants. He uses all his power to produce fear and anxiety in every individual, to suppress every independent emotion, to destroy all independent thinking. They are taught to be heroes, but only under orders. A teacher is not the children's helpful friend who tries as far as possible to work by intellectual means, but the powerful authority who has to revive all aggressive emotions, gigantic fear of the single individual before the power of his leaders, great and small. Great and small. So you have to have fear of the single individual before the powers of his leaders, great and small. So the leader and all of his underlings, you must obey. You must obey. So that sounds very much like even my college education. They must not think because the leader is thinking for them. They shall not dare to be independent individuals, to look for the truth. Don't you dare look for the truth. Don't you dare try to talk about the things you actually believe. Shut up, sit down, do as you're told. That's how you pass college. Every teacher has to be a little leader, and he has all the power he wants. Teachers have all the power that he wants, and he gets to use all his power to produce fear and anxiety in every individual. Teacher management. They believe in 100% compliance. The only way they know how to teach is to get you to be obedient. Shut up, sit down, and listen to the bullshit that I say, and then that's education. That's education. In this modern internet informational world, that's education. We can educate ourselves. We can, go towards our own things. And if we actually valued education, why don't we get into educational circles and actually educate each other? We don't do that because we don't give a shit about education. It's about fascism. It's about shut up, sit down, and doing as you're told. But the fascists know that education is not only a matter of school, but it's also a family life and recreation time too. So they try to control the whole life of the child. Every boy, every girl is forced to be a member of the Nazi youth movement. And the Nazi youth movement tries to attain what school couldn't complete, to conquer the souls of its members so that it can use their strength and their idealism. All children like uniforms, unfortunately also many grown-ups. And so you could see our German and Austrian youth marching in brown shirts. And so I saw also Italian black shirts from 6 to 14 years of age marching in Venice, marching with rifles and daggers, not with toys, but with real rifles. And I saw boys a little older at about 17 singing and marching to Ethiopia and Spain. So he's in Venice, Italy. So I'm not for sure who this guy is or what he does and how he's able to see all this, because that's, he's from Austria. He's in Venice, and then he also loves the German education. He loves, everything about him is his German education, which I haven't got to yet. Okay, so the ones that were singing and marching to Ethiopia and to Spain, many of them didn't come back. It is now a little help for their mothers to understand fascist education. It is too late. Their sons are buried far from their country and can't come back. And they have in their youth organizations the so-called leader principle. They can't choose their leaders. All leaders are nominated by higher leaders. Every member fears his leader and has to obey. Every group leader fears his district leader and has to wait for orders, and so on up to the top of the pyramid, the highest leaders of the whole system. They do not have to fear other leaders, but they fear too. They fear the whole population, and so they are forced to invent new kinds of suppression, propaganda, and the greater their fear, the greater their suppression. So this makes me think of fraternity and sororities, but in terms of public school and the recreation or the youth organizations, again, I can't think of too many of them, maybe the student council or the newspaper, but this makes me think of religion too. In religion, there's youth ministries and shit. So the fascism that's being taught in American schools isn't as well thought out as the fascism that was being thought of Nazi Germany schools. In Nazi Germany, they weren't just controlling you in the school time, they were controlling your family life, and they were controlling your recreation time too. Now, schools do provide a lot of recreation time. They have gyms, and they have baseball fields and soccer fields and football fields, so and the equipment for all that stuff. And I don't know of any other place, if you're not playing in the schools league, you know, for free or for $50 or so, then where are you playing? If you're an adult, you don't have any place to go whatsoever, unless there's, you know, adult leagues. And again, you know, like, anyways, the only recreation time, it seems, that are being provided are the schools. And this is access that, you know, adults don't have. By all these means of education do not suffice, as there is a great danger. The children, the youth, are taught to go on marching, but between the different aggressions in Austria, Czechoslovakia, in Ethiopia, and in Spain are intervals. And they want now to go on marching. If there is no possibility to fight against another nation, they have to fight against the enemy within the country. They need an enemy. They need a scapegoat. They need that target. Who is the asshole? Who is the piece of shit? Well, it's, you know, it's Austria. It's Czechoslovakia. It's all these people. It's Britain conspiring to go against them. And if they don't have another country to attack, they find enemies within their own country. It's the Muslims. It's the Jews. It's the Mexicans. It's the Polish people. And as there is no enemy, they invent enemies to satisfy the youth. Aggressive emotions of the unsatisfied youth are directed against helpless national and religious minorities, perhaps the most disgusting deed of fascism. So they had no external enemy, so they picked some of their own to declare as the enemy. And it was the national and religious minorities. So the Jewish people and national minorities. I'm not for sure what a national minority is. I know I want to actually come up with a list, but homosexuals, handicapped people, socialists, these are all people that were put into the concentration camps, as well as the Jews. It wasn't just Jews, but also homosexuals and handicapped people and socialists. You know, those who didn't believe in fascism. So, aggressive emotions of the unsatisfied youth are directed against helpless national and religious minorities. The most disgusting deed of fascism. And so I saw how the Nazi children, boys of 12, 13, and 14 years of age, were ordered to beat children of religious and national minorities, to steal from the shops of invented opponents of the state. So again, this makes you think of the Jewish shops. The Jews were the opponent, the enemy of the state, and so therefore the Nazi children, the Nazi youth, when Pope Benedict, the Pope for the Catholic Church before Pope Francis, was a member of the Nazi youth. You don't ever forget your training in the Nazi youth. It says the strong inherit the earth, not the weak, the strong, the powerful. They're the ones that inherit the world. And how do you get strong, and how do you unify people? Well, you say it's the Jews. The Jews are the problem. The Muslims are the problem. The Mexicans are the problem. So that way, the fascist children aren't uniting amongst themselves. They don't want democracy. They want obedience. They want hierarchy, pyramid. A strict, like a corporate pyramid, like a pyramid scheme. One at top, everybody else below them.